Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today what I'm doing is talking about how to quarantine a new horse when they come onto your property. Okay, so a lot of times I will get my horses from an auction or something like that. Now if you're buying a horse from someone that you know who has had it for a long time, then that may or may not come into play, especially depending on the vaccinations and stuff like that. But if you are unsure about the horse that you're getting, or about like where they've come from, or if there's a bunch of horses coming in and out, quarantining is always a good idea to keep the horses that you already have on your property safe. Okay, so typically with quarantining, you need to quarantine for 10 to 14 days after a horse comes on to your property. Now, if they don't show any signs or symptoms of any kind of sickness, from about the 3 to 7 day mark, you're probably in the clear, but to be safe, you kind of want to stick that 10 days. It's kind of like your magic number unless symptoms occur. Like symptoms would be like a runny nose, a fever, not eating, fatigue, those kind of things. So that's something to keep in mind. So with quarantine, my plan, and again, please check with your vet and any horse professionals that you may know before doing this. This is just what works for me. So for me, I have this one stall here. This is kind of my quarantine stall. And so every horse that comes through will come through and stay here for the 10 to 14 days. Usually 10 days, but if there's any kind of runny nose or anything that needs to go through, that will wait through 14 days. Now, after they have went through their 10 to 14 days, after that has happened, they will then no longer be in quarantine, and before I put any other horses in here, I will disinfect this horse stall. Okay, so I have a stall as well as buckets that is just for quarantine, as well as a hay bag that is just for quarantine. Now I do disinfect it after each horse's use, not all the time, but after it's been quarantined, I do disinfect it. And the same thing with my brushes. So I only have 2 brushes. So the smaller amount of things that you can do to use for quarantine, the better, because you probably need to disinfect. You could get away with not disinfecting it if they ended up not showing any symptoms, but especially if they have any kind of runny nose or any kind of thing going on, you definitely want to make sure you disinfect, especially those water buckets. Definitely check out like how to disinfect things that I can do in a video, so please comment down below. But in general, I disinfect anything that the horse is going to eat or drink out of with chlorhexidine. I'll show you what that looks like, because that's what the vet has told me to do. And everything else I can kind of use with bleach. Now, you don't have to use bleach, but I want to make sure everything is taken care of and cleaned. So this is Gatsby. He's my new guy here, and he is still technically in his quarantine. He'll be at 14 days tomorrow, so he's actually almost through his quarantine, and he's doing very well. So with his quarantine, I just know that if I'm gonna work any other horses that day, I need to come in, and anything could come on my clothing as well. So if I work any other horses that day, I will work with them first, and then I'll work with Gatsby. And then that way, when I'm done for the day, I can go in, put my clothes in the wash, and possibly shower if it gets into my hair or anything like that, or if he's showing any kinds of symptoms, because you don't want to show any other horses. And actually, I don't have any other horses here at the moment, so if you can even avoid that, then it's even more safe. So now after he gets done with his quarantine, I can then put him out into the rest of everything else. But what I'll do is I will strip this stall completely of everything, hay, bedding, everything, and then I'll spray it down with a pressure washer with a little bit of bleach, a little bit of water, and spray it all out, and then it needs to kind of sit for a couple of days, so like 3 to 4 days, and that way it will be completely disinfected. Again, please check your rules of your veterinarian. Now for all the buckets, I will also scrub it, get all the stuff out of it, scrub it, and then I will spray it down, and then I'll use chlorhexidine to scrub it, and then spray it back and make sure it gets really good and cleaned out, and really sprayed out, because you don't want any of that chlorhexidine left in there. And then I'll leave it out in the sun for like 3 to 4 days, and the sun will actually kill any kind of bacteria, especially helpful if it's like warm weather. So you got to watch out for the bacteria whenever it's colder weather. Now the hay bags and anything fabric will need to be washed. That includes my halter, my lead ropes, all of that stuff, the hay bag, any saddle blankets that I've used, so I try to use only one if I'm going to use a saddle blanket, as well as my brushes. Those, brushes I will actually soak in chlorhexidine and water. You could also probably do bleach, because it's not going to go into their mouth, but I usually just use chlorhexidine for kind of anything that's going to go on the horse. Usually I've found great success with that. But any of the fabric stuff will go into the wash, cleaned out, and then left in the sun for a couple of days, and that kind of cures everything. Now my dirt floor would technically have some bacteria on it, but after I've cleaned it all out and made it fresh and cleaned everything out, in general, like in about a week, it would more than likely be totally fine. Now as far as outside on the grass, again, after a couple of days of sunlight, you should be good. Now something to keep in mind, if you're using like a large tub or trough, you'll need to make sure you clean that properly and do not leave it in there. Now the water tanks or a creek source can harbor the bacteria for a lot longer time. So please make sure you check out like the exact dates and the exact amount of time on each thing. Because again, like after he gets out of quarantine, I'm doing that just to have a smaller area to clean, honestly. But since I have no other horses here, even if he had something, there would be enough time between him and another horse coming in that it wouldn't affect them. But so just letting you know, that's kind of what my plan is. So in his stall, and there's again Gatsby. See, he only has, I have a lot of hay there for him, but it only has that hay manger and then his water buckets in here. So I will just be able to scrub all the metal bars and stuff like that, and as well as the wood. Now again, the wood will harbor bacteria as well, so that's why it's important that you spray it down with like a bleach, and that's why I use a bleach, again, not with them in here, and then let it air out for many days before. How will you be able to see it out here because it is super dark? But so during his quarantine, I have a round pen, which is what I use to train anyway when they first get here, because I'll do round pinning and groundwork, and even the first rides I will ride in the round pen. So all of their work for me for the first 10 to 14 days is pretty much in the round pen anyways. So if I can keep him just in this one stall, straight to the round pen and back, and that's the only places he goes, it's a very small amount of area to clean. So I do the same thing here, is I'll actually spray all of the fence panels, and then of course the grass will be okay in a few days. And honestly, the fence panels would probably be okay, but you want to watch out for any kind of like sinus or anything that might be of like any kind of liquid that's out there. You definitely want to take care of that. Okay, but this is where he actually goes for not only his training, but his like outdoor time. So I'll put a hay bag out here so that he'll have plenty of hay to eat, as well as that's where we'll do our work. And then in the nighttime, he does come in the stall. Now, if you never had a lot of sun, or like if you lived in somewhere that didn't need to have any kind of shelter, then you wouldn't necessarily have to dirty up two locations. I guess you can say dirty it up. In my case, being in Tennessee, I really need somewhere to get him out of the elements, both in summertime and in wintertime. So that just really works out for me the best, to have a stall and the round pen, and then just go back and forth. Plus it gets me catching them often and all that kind of good stuff. So this works out for quarantine. And let me show you some chlorhexidine. Just kind of showing you stuff here. So these are all my normal supplies. So like while I have a horse in quarantine, I don't touch these things, so they're not dirtied up. So up here will be what I use for him. So he has only used a curry comb, a a medium brush, some new salt just to help with his little bits of cuts and scrapes, and then a hoof pick. And then this is his little bags of treats, so I don't dirty up my big box of treats. And here is his folder of exercises. So that is his things, including a cloth there. So once he's out of quarantine, even if he's not sick, then I will thoroughly clean and disinfect those, as well as any tack that he's touched and any buckets and that kind of stuff. If he does show any kind of symptoms, like if he has any kind of runny nose, and I don't feel like a vet is necessary, but now if you see a horse and it's got really runny nose, fever, definitely call your vet. It could be all kinds of issues that come from a bunch of other horses. So definitely unless you feel comfortable, make sure you call your vet for that kind of information to tell you what to do, that good stuff. I have dealt with a bunch of horses, so I kind of know what to look for and what to watch out for as far as warning signs. So I definitely feel comfortable taking a horse on in for quarantine. So with all that, if your horse does have any of the symptoms like runny nose, fever, that you think it's possible they would have had something, then definitely again wait till at least 14 days or until all symptoms have stopped. Like not whichever one comes first. It's like 14 days at least, and then possibly more for if there is any kind of symptoms like runny nose or anything like that. So you definitely want to be more safe than sorry, because any kind of things like that that are like contagious from boarding barns or auction houses or anything like that is super contagious. And so that can touch not only your items here, that I can touch an item that has touched another horse and then touch a non-infected horse, and I could give them whatever they have. Some of these are super, super contagious. You know, you may not think about it, but your clothes and as well as your hands. So you definitely want to, as soon as you walk in, and especially, you know, humans can even get some of this, not very common, but you can wash your hands and do all that. And I also have hand sanitizer just right here. Again, I hand sanitize like immediately, and then when I get in the house, I change all the clothes. And something to think about that you don't usually think about is your canine friends here. They're not normally gonna get it. They're not normally gonna get it, but they could possibly be like a transmitter, as in like if Harley comes and touches him on the nose, especially if he has any kind of runny nose, and then touches another horse, she has just transmitted anything that's going on. So again, I don't have any other horses here, so even if she does touch it, like it won't have any in for another horse comes here, because again, like I said, he's out of his quarantine tomorrow, and I don't have any other horses coming in for at least another 3 to 4 weeks. So even if something was there, I'd definitely have enough time to get over it. But nothing has showed up, so if you're wondering, he's totally good. Just definitely thin, as you can see. He just needs more weight on him. But again, very common with a horse going through auction is a lot of stress on them and stuff like that. So definitely a cool experience to a quarantine, and definitely something that if you've never done it before can seem daunting. But if I was going to have other horses here, which a lot of times that's your situation, you have a horse, and also, you know, people turn their horses out with new horses all the time. It gives them a chance to get to know each other before turning them out together, and so then they're less likely to get into any kind of issues. Since I've started this quarantining, when I turn my horses out together, they don't fight. It's really amazing. So 10 to 14 days, if you had other horses here, I would just make sure I skip one stall. You know, and whenever I tie him up here, I make sure that he can't touch those other horses if they were out there. But you could easily have one there, and it's kind of like the 6 foot distance of COVID. You just want to keep them away. I wouldn't want to put any horse right here in that stall. But once he's over his quarantine period, and let's say I had another horse, this would be a great opportunity to move him to this stall, and where I could let this one be disinfecting, let him have this stall, and have my other horses here, and then they could get to know each other through the bars, and then over the course of a couple days, let them get to know each other, and then get to turn out together as well. So thank you so much for watching. God bless, be adventurous, and make sure you hit like and subscribe. It really, really helps me out. And please comment down below, is there anything I've missed, or is there anything that you have found that has been really helpful? And oh, I almost forgot. Do not forget your shoes. So if you have a horse showing symptoms, and if you have a horse in quarantine, you need to be careful of the shoes. So really what you need to do is have like a clean pair that you do with your horses that are not in quarantine. Switch your shoes to your quarantine pair. Now, a pain and takes some time, yes, it does. Now, and if you do have a horse that has some snotty nose or something like that, or honestly, if you just have a horse in general that like you're just not sure, or the quarantine or something like that, and you want to be extra careful, what you can do is put some bleach and water into a bucket, and I don't have one out because I don't need it at the current moment, but you can have bleach and water in a bucket, and then every day do like a foot wash station. And so especially if you have anything that's like going through your barn, that would be something you want to do. Now, chlorhexidine, you can get that at a Tractor Supply, or I think even like a Walmart possibly, but chlorhexidine is the type of disinfectant that is safe for a horse to be able to drink out of a bucket once it's been totally rinsed out. So as you can see, I've used a lot of it over the course of a while, but this does last a really, really long time. And what you can do is put it in like a spray bottle, which is really helpful. And you can either do it at full concentration or half or something like that. And this works out beautifully. Also use it, just put it on like a rag for scrubbing purposes. Okay, just make sure you watch. So thank you so much for watching. God bless, be adventurous, and we'll see you next time. And bye from Adventures by Kayla.